People who have survived a murder attempt, what is your story? Thank God for my noisy neighbors. I always used to hate how noisy they were, until this happened. When I was about 10, I was riding my bike outside. My parents always let me ride my bike outside during the summer, but only up and down the street we were on. One day, a man in a van was parked across the street. He called me, asking me if I had seen his dog and could help him find it. Me, being a dumb child, offered to help him find it, and I started walking towards his van. My neighbor, an old white lady, came bolting out of her house, hooting and yelling, telling the guy to back off. The dude got back in his car in a hurry and took off, and it wasn't until many years later that I realized how bad the situation could have been. When I was about 10, my grandfather was dying from complications of his heart issues and mental deterioration. I didn't know him very well, as the last time we had been in contact was when I was a baby. My father never liked him and didn't bother coming with me and my mother to visit him in the hospital. When we got there, he was resting peacefully and my mother went forward and whispered some words to him. I imagine his current state of health. I hung back a little bit because the creepy old guy whom I didn't recall seeing in my whole life really freaked me out. Regardless of my anxiety, my mom said I should approach Grandpa and share some nice words with him. I understood by how sad my mother was that I shouldn't argue too much, so I approached his hospital bed to speak to him. He didn't seem conscious at all, so I just did what my mother did, leaning forward and just whispered some nice things to him. Things took a turn when mid-sentence his eyes flared open and he started at me, making me stop what I'm saying. My heart dropped into my ass when he looked at me because it was pure hatred in his eyes. As soon as we made eye contact, he bolted upright from his bed and wrapped his hands around my neck and started throttling me as hard as he could. I barely even remember what happened, but my mom was screaming for a nurse, and Grandpa kept yelling at me while shaking my neck violently. "Fucking betrayal! You betray me!" And then he died. Almost as fast as it began, it was over. His grip loosened and he flatlined. My mother was inconsolable and I was extremely confused and crying out of sheer trauma at the situation. Later, after we managed to calm down, a nurse explained to my mother that his severe dementia had left him barely coherent and it was likely he had thought I was someone else. I didn't learn this until several years later, but my mother suspected my grandfather saw my father in me. My father was an alcoholic, womanizer and fairly abusive in my early childhood, and my grandfather resented him for it. I guess I look a little too much like my dad. My dad has a client that owns a number of fast food restaurants. One day we were working at one of his stores, remodeling and talking about robberies. The client told us that when he was just getting into the fast food business, he lived in Colorado. He was assistant manager at a chain that required him to wear a tie. A drug addict came into the restaurant to rob them and grabbed him from behind, putting a knife to his throat. He opened the register and the guy attempted to slit his throat anyway, except the knife was dull and couldn't cut through the material of the tie. The client began to fight back and escaped with minor injuries. Addict went to prison and apparently he has the tie in a frame at home. I have a friend who had a party at his parents' house when he was at high school that a ton of random people went to. He got super drunk during the party and went upstairs to go to sleep, knowing that his friends would watch the party for him. My friend woke up from his nap to a guy from his school sitting on top of him, stabbing him to death. He was stabbed 7 times before it stopped, and he laid there on the bed dying. The only reason he is still alive is because his best friend came upstairs to ask him if it was alright if he made a frozen pizza and found him. The assailant was put in a jail and recently was realized, and it scares me to know that a guy who wanted to know what it would feel like to kill someone, said during the trial, is still out there free. I jumped out of a moving vehicle. This was in college in a different country. There were commuter buses that took us to and from the campus and dorms. I had to stay 30 minutes later for a project, so around 7:30 p.m. By then the commuter rush was gone. I was the only passenger and I was sitting in front next to the driver. He was acting shady already. It was dark and rainy. He made a sudden dark turn on a grassy until hill. He said something was wrong with the tires. I said I am getting off. He won't let me. The hill leads to a cliffside where rapes and murders have happened before. I had the pointy stick of my umbrella facing him ready to jump if he tried anything, which he tried to reach or grab for me. I jumped and ran straight to the highway where another commuter's bus stopped, surprised to see a girl coming out of the tall grass. I saw the driver of my previous ride, speeding away. Nothing was wrong with his tires. I was abducted at a gas station during undergrad. The locks on my car were broken, and as soon as I got back in, a strange man came in and forced me to drive him to an ATM. I am paralyzed with fear, so any sense or reason I had went out the window. He claimed he worked at Wendy's, and for my generosity he would give me all the Wendy's I ever wanted. On the way to the ATM, he showed me pictures of his daughters on his clearly stolen cell phone. Then a Whitney Houston song came on the radio and he starts bawling his eyes out and screaming, "Why do all the good people have to die? Only bad things should happen to bad people." I go to the ATM, take out cash, give it to him thinking it's over. He then makes me get back in the car and drive him somewhere else. We pass by some train tracks and I'm thinking, this is it. This is where I will be murdered. He asks me what I'm studying in school and I tell him biochemistry. I believe in jet propulsion and all that shit. We are not alone. Aliens are among us. He then makes me pull over at a gas station and he tells me, "Drive away, sweetheart." I call the cops. Had to do a lineup. Apparently this dude had done this to a ton of other women and some were less unscathed than I was. Mine's not extreme by any chance, but a couple of years ago my brother and I went to walk the dog at like 11 p.m. We left through the side gate, live on a corner, and right as we exit I see this weird looking dude at the corner of the footpath walking weirdly towards us. Got bad vibes and told my brother to get the dog and get back inside. This dude is walking kind of side on and hiding something in his hand behind his back. As I'm getting my brother through the gate, the dude says something like, "Oi, mate, can I come in? I need blanket, I'm freezing." I just ignored him and went inside and locked the door. We then get a call from the people who live 2 doors up. The same dude knocked on their door and their 10-year-old son opened it to see the dude holding a fucking hatchet. Anyway, I'm glad I went with my gut on that one.